What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today is the last day of the week. We have a continuation of what happened yesterday with the markets being green. At least we do as we're getting ready for the markets to open over there in the US stock market. After the CPI print yesterday and the prices fell back down to the bottom of the range here for Bitcoin, once again popping back up yesterday. Today continuing that once again. Now going on day number 31 of being within this range right in here from the top to the bottom, right back up to the upper bounds again. Today, just continuing to crawl within here after an otherwise rough year. An optimistic thing to see about this price rise or this strong bounce coming out of here. We were talking about it yesterday. We've talked about it for months at this point. We're at such a pivotal level here within Bitcoin that would appear to be what a completed bear looks like for Bitcoin. And while, as we can see, still just kind of crabbing along in here, crawling along as we should be. So definitely a wild 24 hours that we've been through for sure here in the markets. But the same could be said for about the stock market as well, which of course had that big bounce in here. Then overnight, really just kind of hovering around as we're about 30 minutes from the market's opening right now. We can see we just pushed back up to the upper bounds of this range that we've been in all month over here on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. One of the notable things in here is today's Friday. So it's the last day of the week. The weekly candle will close today. As we can see right now, it's above the 200-week moving average. The 200-week moving average sits over here, a little over 600 points below where we're currently at right now. So if today closes green over here in the stock market or in the Dow Jones, it definitely would close the week above the 200-week moving average. If we see it close like negative 450 points, well, then it would have still gotten stuck underneath there. Now, I do want to touch on the CPI numbers that we saw yesterday. So market wasn't happy with it, right? If we look over here on the CPI print, we can see that we actually ended up getting a 0.4%. The forecast was a 0.2%, and that would be for month-over-month inflation. If we look at the yearly, so the year-over-year, we ended up getting an 8.2% with expectations of 8.1. Notice the last several months, 9.1, 8.5, 8.3, 8.2. The trend is going down, but not like a significant amount to notice, right? But when we're coming up with the year-over-year number, we look back to the last year, the last 12 months. And so when we look back to the CPI month-over-month numbers for the last year, we've been talking about this in here. If you look through all these big prints that we've had in here, and these last three don't have that big of an impact on the actual year-over-year number of 8.2, 8.3, 8.5, 9.1 because of what happened over the last year. I'll zoom in a little bit closer on this to explain why. We could see that here we go. Yesterday was October 13th, right? So then we go back to October of 2021 to see which one we replaced in here. We replaced this one, a 0.4. So this one fell out of the year-over-year number, and it was replaced with this one, 0.4. No change, right? So the number doesn't get drastically impacted when you're replacing these same numbers. Look at that a month prior. It was only 0.3 over here in September of 2021. Well, we had a 0.1. There's not a big difference between 0.3 and 0.1. But these 3 months right here, August, September, and October's prints were the smallest of the next ones that came up. So we could see that next month on our next print, it's a 0.9. So this 0.9 is going to fall off next month when we get November's print for October. That's the big question of what kind of number are we going to see over here? Are we still going to see this 0 or 0.1 or 0.4 or 0.3, 0.2, somewhere in there, and replace this 0.9 out of the year-over-year number? If we do, if we still keep printing these types of numbers and start dropping these out of the year-over-year number, we are pretty quickly going to see this drop from 8 to 7 to 6 to 5, because all the prints in here are much bigger than the 3 that we just had over here that got replaced by these. These were like the 3 smallest outside of the May print for April's data. Otherwise, everything's much bigger. So for those forward looking to say, will this CPI print come down? It looks very likely it's going to be. Now, of course, it's just a number, right? It doesn't mean inflation's going away. It doesn't mean that the prices that you're seeing out there are actually going to be coming down from where they're at right now. It just means they're not growing at this big of a rate like they were. The inflation that you get is likely sticky. It's just, will it continue to rapidly rise at the rate that it has been, or will it kind of chill out? And starting next month, when we start replacing these numbers in here for the next, 6 months going on, we should be seeing the CPI number drop, which it has been. We can see that happening in here, that there's been this change happening in here heading down. But due to the enormous numbers that took place last year, we should start seeing it rapidly fall. Everybody, of course, is focusing on the 2% number. I don't know if we'll ever get to 2%, but these 8s and 9s likely will, in the next few months, we'll probably see 7, 6, 5s. And so, does the smart money know that? Probably. Heading back to crypto, we're going to talk about XRP for a second, and then I'm also going to tie that in with the total altcoin market cap, because yesterday we saw the same thing. We saw a wick down here in the total altcoin market cap. It too has bounced back up. And while that move sure reminds me of something, and yesterday I had done a 3-hour long live stream with my super followers, because I was explaining to them I'm turning the super follower feature off over there on Twitter. But we got into the conversation of XRP, and like we've talked about over here, the sign of strength area for a back test is around there between 37 to 39 to 40 cents. And that we just haven't gone back there, right? And it's just this blunder of, are we going to eventually make our way back there? Are we just in an accumulation range now before a new level ends up getting moved up? And we started talking about the time period from back in 2020, this magnificent time period we went through right in here. It dubbed the 22.5-cent time period that we went through. We spent 90 days down here at these lows. We waited 45 to 50 days for it to get down here, then 90 days down here in these lows before finally the price did end up moving its way back up, and then, the SEC. But this whole move down in here is similar to what we're talking about right now. And it's very similar to what we actually just saw happen over there in the total altcoin market cap. So typically when we have these types of breakouts, the most common backtest area is right here. Like a technical level for XRP would be right here at about 38 to 39 cents would be this area right in here, right in the middle of the sign of strength, which emerged right in here before breaking out. This is usually your area to go to, and backtesting right over here, which when we were having that breakout back then before we went up and then came back for our 22.5 cents, that's what we were having, right? We were having our sign of strength happening in here before finally the breakout eventually ended up coming. Lots of consolidating in here, lots of teasing in here, and then finally it came back, but it got real close. And I remember this time period real closely because I was like, all right, I am making my entries into XRP. I'm doing it in sets of 4. I believe I'd said I'd made a couple of entries down in here, but I wasn't willing to make my last one until we saw 22.5 cents. And it was like, why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you doing it? I remember very clearly, and it was just because this is the most common place to pull back to. And then finally we ended up getting that 22.5 cents, and then it waddled for a very long time afterwards. And it was hard to be that patient, but then I finally did end up getting it there on September 23rd. But still, over time, given enough time, it still found its way back in there, right back to the sign of strength, right back to that level. In this circumstance, it took a long time, and the people who were there during that time can remember it took a long time, and it was pretty annoying how long it was taking and how grueling it was in this final phase before it finally gave us that little push down in there. And I'm not saying that's what's exactly happening over here on the total altcoin market cap, but boy, it has reminiscences of that exact moment, right? Where we fell back, then it goes boom, it plunges for it one time, and then it bounces out. Doesn't mean that this thing turns up and goes into a straight line back upside. We could go sideways for a very long time before something ends up coming. But this little move and how aggressive it was to bounce back has memories of that moment for me. But the question still remains on whether or not is XRP going to get back down there, or is it going to keep going up? And I got asked, what do I think, man? And that's where things get a little bit just, I could definitely see that we have something similar to what looks like the things we talked about, where accumulation has just kind of begun in here, right? Was that good enough to be going deep enough for a backtest in here, even though we didn't backtest anything? We didn't even backtest the top over here from back in July. Have we already started kind of consolidating and building a range, which is the thing I've been looking for, right? With a backtest, looking for really more of a healthy consolidation rather than something that's just pumping its way up into a retracement and then heading back down. And I know that's not everybody's favorite thing for me to say, that this isn't what I want. I understand this would be exciting for a moment, but this isn't what I want. I want something more like this, where we can go off and just kind of keep on grinding our way up there. That's the best thing for XRP from my views at least. So I like seeing that we're doing more of consolidation in here. And definitely there's similarities happening in here to in here. But one still could argue this is like an ABC that's happened in here off of the top. And still it's just going to do like it did back in 2020, where it just takes a long time to get in here and then finally ends up getting it, right? And I think that's feasible too. And structurally, I don't have a reference to go back and say, hey, we do this, and then somehow we come back and touch here. But in all examples that I have in which we do this is just the place we come back to. And like the one thing we saw like with Ethereum Classic, right, through 2018 through 2021, it had a big Wyckoff accumulation with the sign of strength, fired up, from $5 to like $175. And what did it do? It still came all the way back down here. So while we remain within the range here for XRP, it still seems like it could definitely go either way. And it's one of those times where, in here, man, I see Wyckoff accumulation happening in here. But at this point, there's just still, that gap still sits there. And we haven't gotten to it. We know the overhead resistance is right there with the 200-week moving average for the XRP versus Bitcoin price chart right in here, which has not been able to clear above after finally touching it for the first time since 2019. We know that we're still dancing here with the 200-week moving average while underneath all of the support in here. But as we sit ranging in here, it still leaves that wide open. But I'm certainly optimistic to see that XRP is holding itself up so well. We know several coins out there are not. Some of them are doing phenomenal, like QNT. Man, I wish I had some of that, but I can't buy it because it's a straight line up. But man, that one's doing awesome. Probably the best performer in the market. But XRP is right up there with it too. XRP is holding its own very well. But once again, another week passes by. The range continues to play out in here. The gap is still down there. That backtest region is still down there untouched. And it looks like we'll still have to wait until next week before an answer can come. Because as we are currently right now, this whole region that we're in, we're just sitting kind of right here in the middle of it. The range has continued for weeks and we sit in the middle, but still holding up nicely. Nice to see Bitcoin was still able to maintain that range after yesterday's scare heading back down to the bottom of the range. Still just playing along as these historical accumulations have done before. The collective altcoin market still holds itself up for another week, maintaining the 200-week moving average and the previous 2018 all-time high. And XRP, while finding some resistance at that 200-week moving average on the XRP Bitcoin price chart on the weekly time frame, still not seeing some type of like massive rejection come out of there. It's okay for prices to get pushed back, but it gets pretty scary when things get pushed back very hard and very aggressively. And even should this level get pulled back to, at least we're doing it in a very calm manner. Even if you were to say to turn over here right now and head down like that, well, it's not like we got rejected immediately and went straight back down. That would be pretty scary. And as we saw back there, back in 2020, when it did that, it took so long because it was actually really bullish, not getting rejected really bearishly. So I'll take a victory for even just ranging in here to say, hey, we didn't get massively rejected and we know we're at some serious resistance. So that's cool. Otherwise, as we head into next week, we'll see how this range does. 31 days now for Bitcoin sitting here within this range. That's really kind of the thought process we had kind of heading into this thing, that it really would last throughout the rest of October. Good news is it's the 14th. We're almost halfway through October. And holding the lows, I'll take that as a victory for this week with how dramatic it was yesterday. So the thing I'll be watching for throughout the rest of today is going to be over here on the stock market, which has been like a yo-yo, like a seesaw. Once again, I've seen this thing up hundreds of points, down 100 points, up over 100 points. Here we are, we're down over 100 points again. Be interesting to see how this thing does throughout the rest of today. Will it be able to maintain that 200-week moving average? That's the big question. And we'll see if this market can smell that our next print for CPI, so long as those numbers are in the same range of 0.4%, 0.32 or 1 for month over month, that next month, for the first time in a long time, this will actually have a 7 in the front of it. So that'll be it for this one for today. It's the end of the week, a wild week. How the market is green after this week is wild. There's been a lot going on over here in my world and the blockchain backer world. Like I mentioned in yesterday's video and over there on Twitter, I did launch a newsletter over there, a premium newsletter. There's a link in the description of this video, blockchainbacker.substack.com. On Fridays, I like to update you guys on what's going on with me and a couple of topics that go on in my life. Typically, we talk about drumming, we talk about my fish tank, This week was big because we launched the newsletter. But with everything going on in my life, I've had to kind of like do some stuff to like kind of free up my time. One of those is like turning off the super followers over here on Twitter, even though I absolutely have adored and loved my super followers. I thank you so much for your support. I even had to kind of take a step back from drums. I'm still doing my drum lessons, but I had to take a step back from playing in the actual band because my time has been ridiculous. It's like my days are like 15 hours long, and I needed to find a way to free some time. So the drumming thing is just taking a pause. I'm still doing everything. I'm learning open hi-hats right now and double bass drums, and it's fun, but it's time consuming. But now I'm just sticking to my actual lessons, and I'm not actually involved in the band, at least for like the next 4 to 6 weeks. And then my plan is to get back in the band once I have things really reorganized in my life, so I have like a better standard operating procedures for my own life. So this has taken just kind of a pause for just a second. And when it comes to the band, when it comes to the fish tank, it is constant excitement up in here. You can't take a break from these guys. But the fish tank is obviously very clear. It's doing really well. This yellow guppy has still not had babies. So clearly, I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to trying to figure out when a guppy is going to have babies. But you can see she is not happy with the male, telling that male, stay away from me. She's hiding in that corner. The tank is very clear. You can see all the way through it, no problem. Having a little bit of an algae problem. So if it's not one thing, it's another. This time it isn't like the algae like I had, where it was like an algae bloom, like craziness, but more of like a hair algae that I think isn't very good. So I'm adding some other stuff in there. I went and talked to some people about it on how to fix it, and adding like some fertilizers in there. I think it's like got a CO2 problem and everything, but I added the oxygenator thingy. So I don't know. And there's more plants for the plant people. Did you see how many plants were in there? Those are all real plants. So it is constant problem solving there with the fish tank, but I do enjoy it. Otherwise, that'll be it. The big thing for me this week was the launch of the newsletter. That was a thing in the works for a little while. I'm happy to have that happen. There's a link to it here in the description of this video, blockchainbacker.substack.com. Otherwise, I hope that you guys have a wonderful weekend. Looks like we've got a volatile day already. We'll see how the week wraps up. Otherwise, I'll have my eyes glued to it all day, and I hope that you guys have a wonderful weekend. But all right, that's going to be it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice, and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.